Hello and welcome to the guide. My name is Dijon Dillan, and today we're covering The Dragon That Swallowed the Sun. Like all my other achievement videos, the background footage has been recorded in the past because this did take me about 9 tries, so don't be discouraged if you don't get your first try, but hopefully with this tutorial you should get it pretty quickly. Okay, let's get into it.
Okay, let's go.
For starters, you're going to put all of your units into a single general like I did, and you're going to convert them to the cavalry template because you're only going to be using cavalry today, and I delete 2 of them. That way I have enough guns in stockpile for when the banditry focus completes that I can take all 3 decisions to completely remove banditry from the country before I get a single debuff from it. That being said, your first focus should be pacify the country and then invite Japanese settlers. And you can start by researching tools and engineering and set your construction queue to look something like this. You'll have 1 slot building civ factories while the rest build mills, and as your focus is complete and you get more building slots, just keep hitting the plus button to keep filling them up. For focuses, I rushed towards invite foreign investors, and then I reached out to Germany while improving relations with them, and then I continued down the focus all the way until I got the military factory buff. But the thing is, if you go that route, you get called into the war with Japan no matter what against China, but in this case, that's what I wanted because we are killing China today. But if you did want to wait to go to war with China, you can always rush towards the assertiveness focus, and then you get the option of whenever you want to declare on them. Just keep in mind that if you do this, the Soviets have the option of declaring on you if Communist China joins them. China can even join the Allies. And the last few things I want to say for setup are that you want to put 1 military factory onto artillery right away, the first one you get, so you start building the efficiency and stockpile of them, because they will be put as a support company into your first upgrade you do on your cavalry. Speaking of that, here is that template that you upgrade to as soon as you get a stockpile of guns. And I would produce enough cavalry to cover at least 3 fronts, which is your Korea front, your China front, and then your northern China front. And you also need some to get the port of Dillan. These are the 3 advisors you'll take. The civilian advisor first while you're building civs, the second advisor is the military factory advisor while you're building mills, and thirdly is Grigory when you're going to war with Japan because he gives a major bonus to your cavalry and attack towards major nations. And I recommend promoting him a field marshal after you take him. You want your officer corps to look like this, with cavalry heritage being one of the first things I take to get that cheap cav unit design cost. Keep in mind you're going to have to upgrade one of your advisors into the cav leader, but that can be done after you grind them a little bit. You're going to want to continue researching production, industry, engineering, guns, and artillery, and your focus does have a research slot that you can unlock that can help catching you up on time. That should cover most of the early game setup. From here, there is just actually a lot of waiting, pretty much until you go to war with Japan. You can do your micro on the China front if you are bored. Otherwise, it's just microing industry and taking partial mobilization after you've purged the General Affair Council. Now there's a few conditions I want to talk about to get this achievement. You can't join a faction, and in this video I didn't. Also, you have to annex all of Japan's core territory. That includes Marcus Islands, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. And if you don't annex all these in your peace deal, they're probably going to get puppeted or released by somebody else, and it's going to make your life miserable and you'll probably have to restart. I saw in a lot of guides online, people say to puppet Japan and then annex them later. In this method, we killed Japan and China at the same time, and we got lucky in the world state that nobody else joined. So we were able to get a peace deal where we controlled all the score. You're going to have an option to divert machine tooling inside your decisions. Don't forget to take that. And also you're going to have an option to seize Japanese arm depots. Do that as many times as you can because it's going to get you about 30,000 guns to start the war that are going to be extremely important. And it's going to get you a little bit of planes that are going to hold you over till you start to make your own. And on the topic of planes, you're going to want to design ones that roughly look like this to start. And here's the CAS design, and you keep them relatively similar as you keep upgrading them. The idea is to keep them cheap enough that your country can still afford them. But I didn't put a production on them until I held Beijing, and I didn't start researching my airplanes until I was fully caught up on all my other researches. So if I'm not mistaken, that should cover everything before we actually get to war. And if you had any questions, please leave a comment below. I'd be more than happy to respond to it. When the Focus Independence War happens, you automatically go to war with Japan. Right away, I take the focus, reclaim the empire, therefore I get core attack on China. And I already had my battle plans going for my cav because I wanted to snake down as much as I could right away. Since Japan was super occupied with China, I was able to sneak in quite far behind them, and I was able to set up a few small encirclements that just gave me the numbers advantage. I was completely able to snake down Korea and get the ports, so that Japan couldn't even take it back for the rest of the game. But not for a lack of trying. You'll notice they naval invade like every 10 seconds, but if you have a garrison army like I did, you just take your garrison army and you micro in, and quite often Japan will actually walk out of the ports, and all you have to do is walk in behind them. And here's an example of that. You see Japan's really excited to attack outwards, and I just counterattack them, and boom, I have their port, and they're all encircled. I was quick enough to cap Manchukuo and get a few units encircled in there. Unfortunately, the front line stalled off for the next few years while I just grinded XP and traits for my generals, and I even went mass mobilization. At this point, I started to work on my air force, and just battle planning the enemy to keep their guns around 0 at all times that I could. Also, when Japan goes for a naval invasion on any parts of your territory, you'll notice that they'll actually abandon the other fronts for the most part, especially if you've killed a lot of their troops and they don't have enough to do both. So keep that in mind going forward. The more encirclements you do, the easier it's going to get. And when building your air force, you're going to need to import materials. I found if you block off the 3 sea zones, the Eastern China Sea, the Sea of Japan, and the Yellow Sea, you can actually trade for all the materials you need without using any convoys, and this will be essential because otherwise your convoys will get sunk by Japan. I did take the Cav Leader trait on all my generals as soon as I got it. It did mess up my adaptable grind, but I found the 15% bonus defense was so worth it. Again, I can't stress how important having Cav is, especially under green air. You're actually able to get green bubbles, and on top of that, you're able to move fast as almost any tank division, especially in China. And this is the final Cav template I ended up using. I didn't switch till I had about 40k extra guns. Most of the 40s were actually just spent sitting in this region of China, making just different encirclements and killing off naval invasions. It turned out to be one of the best strategies, and I think I killed over 1 million Japanese in naval invasions alone. I also took any opportunity I could to get encirclements where China overextended themselves. It was really easy because supply on the front is so low, and I kept draining my enemy's gun stockpile all the way to 0, so anytime they would take unit losses like this, they couldn't replenish them. And I finally started trading positively with Japan in the air and getting CAS damage in on every battle. And for the state of the world, Germany beat the Soviets, so I had no more trade partner. And that made it kind of an awkward, tense situation because the Allies were getting slapped around, and the USA never joined the war at all. I'm talking even up until the very end. So it was just Axis dominant the entire time. My air situation only got better and my CAS damage only got higher, and once I started using these templates, I dominated the Japanese until they had no air force left. And once that happened, I was able to go wherever I wanted with my cavalry. I mean, I seriously could click on any port and they would just go there alongside the CAS help, and it was no problem. I seriously got encirclement on encirclement once the green air and CAS damage was flying. Before that, I was completely useless grinding guns into the wall. Afterwards, I was positive on guns all the way through. That's when I started to push China, no problem, and I was able to push all the way to Indochina and completely push Japan out. I was even able to catch Japan retreating out of China, which caused a lot of encirclements. Therefore, they weren't able to defend the home island when I invaded later. And once I set my eyes to China, they were so exhausted on guns and divisions that they weren't able to hold even for a second against me. And I didn't care if Japan got any territory because I knew I'd be able to take it back quicker than they could reinforce it. Now it was time to take the Japanese main island. With the USA not in the war and the UK getting beat, there was no chance of them helping me. So since I had already green air, I decided it was time to make a naval bomber and submarines that I could use to try and get green navy to get over to the home island. This turned out to be a really good idea because their navy constantly got forever trapped in a naval battle against my subs, and then my nav bombers would just come in and just bomb the hell out of their navy. So even though I couldn't beat their navy 1-to-1, we just whittled their organization down to the point where they couldn't fight us anymore. And from that strategy, we were actually able to launch our Marines. You can see here we got green navy. And here's the template I used for my Marines. But the reason why they did so well is because there wasn't much left on the home island from the encirclements, and that the CAS was doing so much damage. I was able to land with ease, and once I did, I started battle planning right away to try and get as many tiles as I could. But the Japanese units couldn't put up any defense against me. With the CAS flying, I had all the advantages. And here you can see me just checking to make sure, I don't have the achievement yet, but I'm just about to get it. And here I have all my air flying just to make sure I'm getting as much CAS damage per tick in. And finally, boom, it happens, peace deal. And once you annex the selected states that we talked about earlier from the peace deal, you should get the dragon that swallowed the sun. And if you made it this far through the video, thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, I appreciate you. Looking forward to the next video. Take care, guys, and don't forget to subscribe.